Who is the better edge rusher out of Jared Verse and Dallas Turner? We're going to talk about this and that and see where they rank amongst the previous draft class. We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout and a senior draft analyst. And guys, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. But I got to kick this introduction over to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man. And listen, I want to say shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Like I always say, man, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you comment, and make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel. DP, today's show, man, we are talking about Jared Verse versus Dallas Turner, right? Would you draft Jared Verse at the top of the first round or wait to potentially get Dallas Turner in those 20s, right? We're going to have that really good conversation with some round one prospects, and then we're going to see how does Jared Verse stack up to the rest of these draft classes, right? We're talking about 2023. We're talking about 2022. We're talking about Aiden Hutchinson. Or is he as good as a Jermaine Johnson who went the back end of the first round, DP? We're going to talk and have that conversation, and then guess what? It's back. Coach K's key thought, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. I am talking about those quarterbacks today, man. So my key thought is about those quarterbacks. But DP, before we get started, man, why don't you hit him with our title sponsor?
Listen, guys, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Jared Verse, and so it's trips me. Jared Verse versus Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner versus Jared Verse. This or that, and these are two of the better and probably two of the top guys in terms of at the edge rusher position of the 2024 NFL Draft. And as you know, with Jared Verse, you know, the difference in out of the two is going to be the size. Jared Verse is listed at 6'4", 260, where, you know, you look at Dallas Turner, he's listed at 6'4", 242. We'll get the official height, weight, arm length measurements in about a week at the combine, Keith. But, you know, just looking at their numbers, right? Jared Verse, pressures, hurries, 36 on the season, 15 QB hits, 11 sacks, and I believe he had a fumble force as well this season. When then you flip the page to a Dallas Turner, 33 pressures and hurries, 11 QB hits. I believe he had 2 to 3 forced fumbles as well as 11 sacks. When you look at these two guys, height, weight, strength, numbers, all of these things put into the pot, Keith, and you're trying to whip it up in the kitchen. What is your outcome? Who are you taking when you look at these guys?
I am probably going Jared Verse in this conversation, DP. And the reason is that I have a larger sample size of him being the man, right? And then secondly, the speed to power conversions for me, DP, are real. And I always say in the NFL, listen, we love speed, we love hand usage, but guess what? At the end of the day, this is a grown man game, right? And sometimes you have to win by simply going through another grown man. Like football is a physical sport, and we even see with some, you know, most edge rushers, right? I think Von Miller kind of gets away with it as a strictly speed guy, but most edge rushers, man, you're talking about your Khalil Mack, your Joey Bosa, your Nick Bosa, your Myles Garrett, right? Their ability to play with power and play with strength in their hands and throughout their upper body is present. And I think that's necessary when you're talking about being an edge rusher. So I would probably go Jared Verse in this conversation with the understanding that Dallas Turner has a lot to offer, right? They were tied in sacks. Dallas Turner extremely productive. Some of those reps against, I think, Ole Miss and University of Georgia, right, with some beautiful, clean reps. But I'm taking Jared Verse just because, like I said, larger sample size, the speed, the power conversions are definitely there, and that's what I like in the edge rusher.
No, and Keith, I'm with you in taking Jared Verse. It's the separation for me isn't large because I love Dallas Turner. I think Dallas Turner hasn't even. I think we just seen the tip of the iceberg, like you said. Like, you know what I mean, like
I believe so.
He has only had 1 year as a guy, as you put, Where we've seen Jared Verse like the last 2 years, he's been the dude, right, at Florida State. Where I just look at Dallas Turner, I'm like, man, different names pop up, right? You mentioned Von Miller. I think about Harold Landry. Those kind of bendy. Like, I don't think he's undersized. 242 is not bad, right? So he's decent build. I think his arm length and everything's good. Quick, explosive first step, but his game has always been more speed and agility and bend around the corner rather than as much power. I do think he flashes a little bit of that speed to power conversion with the long arm and stuff like that to walk a tackle back, especially because guys are. I think with his speed, he forces guys to overset in their pass sets when they get vertical, and I think that's where he's able to sell that outside rush and then convert the power rather.
Yeah, so the game that kind of made me a little bit worried with the speeds of power conversions was the game against LSU. He went against two talented, and then one guy, Will Campbell, right, the left tackle for LSU. I'm more than sure he'll be a draft prospect guy that we're going to talk a lot about this upcoming draft. Man, when he couldn't run around him and he had to work through him, the pass rush just kind of stalemated, right? So yeah. I'm interested to see, and I think this, when you talk about the development of Dallas Turner, I think it sits in I want a couple things, right? His alignment, meaning his 2-point, 3-point, 4-point stance, right? Because I liked him and I thought he was more explosive out of a 3-point stand than a 2-point stance, which is kind of weird, right? And it's a little bit different, but I just thought he was, and I thought he played, and maybe because he came out of with a lower pad leverage, right? Lower pad height, lower pad trajectory, and it allowed him to be more explosive and be able to bend, get up under the offensive tackles, turn the corner, and get up under the edge. So that's what I liked about Dallas Turner. You're talking about in a 3-point stance, but I also think too, alignment as far as, is he going to be tight condensed to the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle? Is he going to be in a wide 9 alignment? I think all of those things, DP, can play into the success or the, I don't want to say non-success, right? But just the lack of sack production. So he can either have really good sack production or lack of sack production based off of those minor details that I think that the general manager who drafts him needs to pay attention to, the defensive coordinator who coaches him needs to pay attention to, and then his position coach needs to pay attention to, because I do believe there's a lot there, but I think there could be an average amount there if you don't put him in a correct situation.
No, Kevin, I think the discussion about whether tightly condensed or wide 9 is going to be an intriguing one, because I think hand usage wise, and I think I was listening to Mike Tomlin on the Pivot talk about how you look at like proper hand technique and placement and stuff. He's like, that's a coaching thing, right? And which I think we all know that. Like, that's something that can be coached up. But where he is right now, I think he's still kind of raw in that. So I would definitely put him more of a, and that's the crazy, like you said, he's more explosive out of that 3-point stance. And I wonder if an NFL team would kind of put him in that kind of track 4-point stance, 2 hands in the dirt, low trajectory to the ground, and let him just fire off. Because like you said, that drive phase, like sprinting in track or running the 40-yard dash, where he keeps that pad level low, where he optimizes his speed and his burst. And I think if you right now you want to put him more of a wide 9 guy on third downs rather than, because typically you think about the Aiden Hutchinsons or even the Will Anderson Jr., guys who have really good hands. Oh yeah, I can put you condensed because the action starts much quicker, and you can, when you use your hands well, and you can defeat blocks and reduce hitting surface area for tackles, and you can clear that shoulder and get around quickly, right, without having to have the best hips and best bend. Like those guys can excel at that. I think where he's still a little bit raw with his hands. Well, I don't even know if I want him too much close to the action. I want him to be able to pull that tackle out on that island where you don't have that bumper or that guard on the inside. That, hey, if that guard is not protected, or if he's uncovered, we're very close to him and he can work as that bumper, keep your inside path protected and keep you clean. Where I want to pull you out on that island to where now there's a 2-way go. And I think that's the part of Turner's game also. It's the hands and then the inside counters. With his speed, Keith, he's going to be able to stress these guys vertically and on the perimeter. Now work that inside track, because you do that, that's when you become a full-fledged pass rusher and a threat on every down in the NFL.
Yeah, and I look at it too when we talk about drafting, right? And that's why we say this or that when we take Jared Verse for first in that top 10, Dallas Turner in that top 10, or top 12, top 15, however you want to phrase it, right? And I think sometimes when you look at the draft, right, sometimes we like to swing for the upside, or
Mhm.
draft community, and we want the general managers to swing for the upside, but sometimes proven production is a-okay, right? And that's why I talk about the larger sample size with Jared Verse. And I just go back to something as simple as last year, right? One of my guys, Byron Young, edge rusher from Tennessee, right?
Yep.
I just liked him because he just got home. He knew how to get home. And then you wonder why a guy like Will McDonald goes in the top 15. You know what I'm saying? And when you cut the film on, it doesn't make sense. And then, but it proves itself in the NFL, right? Byron Young, up until this point, probably had the better rookie year, right? Even though he went an entire round or two later. But, we'll figure that out. But DP, listen, man, we talked about Jared Verse versus Dallas Turner, right? We both took Jared Verse. And now we get to see, where does he stack up against the last two draft classes, right? And we talking about some talented guys. We're talking about Kayvon Thibodeau. We're talking about Aiden Hutchinson, right? We're talking about Trayvon Walker. We're talking about Will McDonald from last year. So we're going to get into that conversation coming up next, man. Where does Jared Verse stack up against the past two draft classes?
No more stressing or worrying when it comes down to buying the next tickets for your next big event, guys. Let me introduce you to Game Time. They are the fast and easy way to buy tickets to all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. What offers? What do they have? What benefits are there, DP? Well, let me tell you, family, last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Their tickets are easy to find and buy, but this is my favorite. This is my favorite benefit. They show the views from all the seats in the venue, so you know what vantage point you will have before you purchase your ticket. And guys, listen to me. If your significant other loves Usher the way my wife does, okay, her and her friends love the man. But if you want to do something nice for him and you're in the Charlotte area in October, on October 23rd at 8 p.m., you can get tickets for as cheap as $140 on the Game Time app. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Let's stack the board, guys. Where does Jared Verse, edge rush out of Florida State? He won the this or that versus Dallas Turner. But Keith, looking at these last two draft classes, 2023 and 2022, a lot of pass rush talent between those two classes. Let's talk about it. Let's get the names to the people, to the family, so we can kind of see where Jared Verse really kind of ranks out with these guys.
Yeah, let's take a walk through memory lane real quick. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep this fair, right? Because Jared Verse is a first round pick. So I'm just name off the first rounders, right? And so go with 2022. We have to remember, right? We had Trayvon Walker. He went pick number one. Then we had Aiden Hutchinson, we had Kayvon Thibodeau, we had Jermaine Johnson and George Karlaftis all going the first round of the 2022 draft. 2023, last year's draft, we had Tyree Wilson, we had Lucas Van Ness, we had Will McDonald, we had Miles Murphy, and we had Felix Aniduke Uzoma. So that's the guys, DP. I think that's 10. I think that's five first round edge rushers in the last two drafts. That's a total of 10. And then where does Jared Verse come in with that? I want to get your opinion first after I read off those names.
Man, I think immediately what I thought about is, all right, who am I putting over Jared Verse? Aiden Hutchinson, Will Anderson Jr., and I'll probably say maybe Kayvon. Maybe Kayvon. Whoo, that's tough. Yeah, Aiden, Will. I'm not gonna lie, Jared Verse is like 3 or 4 for me right now. Like, just the battle between him and Kayvon, and I think he's more explosive than Kayvon was coming out. Like that first step, the power. I'm gonna put Jared Verse at 3. I'm gonna put Jared Verse at 3 and have Kayvon right behind him at 4.
Okay, I'm gonna go. This is what I'll go. I think he's gonna end up 5 for me. Because you mentioned, and I left him off. I'm sorry, I don't know how I did that. I left Will Anderson off the list. Will Anderson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson. I'm gonna go Jermaine Johnson. Another Florida State guy. I was a big Jermaine Johnson guy.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, and he's starting to turn it on with the Jets. And then I'll probably go Jared Verse. And then I look at the rest of this class, right? So are we comfortable with saying that we'll take him over guys like, I'm looking at it, Tyree Wilson, right? Just give me a yes or no with that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going down the list to make sure. Lucas Van Ness.
Yes.
Will McDonald.
Yes.
Miles Murphy. This is a tricky one. How you feel
That's the
about that one?
tough one. Yeah.
Because I like Miles a lot, and they might be tied. DP. I think this is probably more the threshold
Yeah.
of where I will probably have that kind of conversation. Right, Jared Verse versus Miles Murphy. I, I, this one tough.
I'm taking Verse. I think
Taking Verse.
from a rush standpoint, I think he's a little bit more versatile, more
Okay.
explosive out of the blocks and stuff. But it's close. Those two, I really like Miles Murphy. You know what I mean? At Clemson, I saw him his whole career being in South Carolina. But yeah, I'm gonna take Verse a little bit over him.
Okay, and I can't, you know what? I can't even put up a full-fledged argument against that, right? Because I think I agree with you. I think he's a little bit more versatile. And Miles was probably more of a 4-3 defensive end, right?
Defensive
Than
end, yeah,
anything. And then I think I know where you're staying with this, but Felix and Duke Uzoma, you probably taking Verse, right?
no, 100%.
Okay, let's go to the 2022 class. DP Trayvon Walker, right? Because we didn't talk about him as for well, you said that you would take Verse over him. How are you viewing that situation?
So, because us at the Draft Network, we talked all the time about Trayvon. I was like, man, because I had Georgia in my region, and I was like, listen, this is a top in the first round guy, but it was more so he was not refined at all, rushing off the edge. Excuse me. He really didn't rush off the edge at Georgia. He was more rushing from that 3-tech, like interior defensive line spot, where now we're starting to see the wheels really turn for him after the second year in the league, and him having almost 10 sacks, if not 10 this year. But I think coming out as a prospect versus hand placement, I think his hand technique, the ability to actually stand up, put his hand in the dirt as a true edge rusher, I'm taking Verse. If you're telling me, I just look at Trayvon so much more as like, man, if I put him inside, put him at that 3-tech on third downs and let this man cook.
Yeah, no, I'm so this is where I'm at with this DP. I like Trayvon Walker better as a defensive prospect. But if we're talking about edge rushers, and I think this is where this conversation comes into, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably taking Jared Verse as the edge rusher. And we like you said, we talked about it at the Draft Network, right? With Trayvon Walker, in the sense of the fact of that this guy was 280 pounds. Put him at defensive tackle and let him win. All I could think of is DP just what if Coach Spags had him, right? What if Steve Spagnuolo had him? Oh my God, right? Because you think about this, and I know that teams, they say, man, we need an edge rusher, right? But if you have a really good defensive tackle, you are A-OK. Like, I don't think the Los Angeles Rams look at it and be like, man, I wish Aaron Donald played defensive end, right? You're not thinking about that. Or the Kansas City Chiefs, right? They're not looking at Chris Jones and being like, man, we'll be in a much better spot.
George Karlaftis get one-on-ones every game because teams are trying to stop Chris Jones on the interior.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think that's how you have to look at that conversation, right? It's like, you know what, just move him inside. And so that's our little spill on Trayvon Walker, and that's what I'm voting for. And I think that's why he's had more success. I think they have been kicking him down a little bit more. I've seen it a couple of times on Twitter. But DP, you just mentioned his name. This is the last guy that we didn't talk about as far as being a first-round player. I just went George Karlaftis. I'm sorry, George Karlaftis.
Yeah, I take Verse over him as well. I really like George coming out. You know what I mean? But I just look at, again, just the things you can't teach, man. Like that explosiveness. And George was a power rusher, good hands, knew how to collapse and condense gaps and everything. Good run defender, as we see with the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. He played a big role on that defense this year. But I just look at crazy enough, we talk about upside, right? I look at what Verse is coming out, and it's like, man, the way that he wins, like, it's hard to duplicate that and just say, okay, George, can you win the same? And I know people win differently, but for me, I think with Jared Verse, man, that power, that speed, that explosiveness, and then it's also the crazy thing of, like, what you probably seen on tape, when they work him on those stunts, and he's the looper coming in, rushing from the edge inside, those guards have no shot, man. Like, that power, that speed, the power. I can't remember if it was the Louisville game. I just remember watching him just like flatten a guard as he's like gearing up, coming around the loop, and just puts the guy on his back and gets into the backfield. And I'm like, that is terrifying as a quarterback, because you identify where Verse is on the edge, then they do that stunt and he twists and loops inside, and now your guard's on his back looking up at the sun, and you're like, bro, I'm unprotected now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you were Mac Jones, if you were Brock Purdy, if you're not, well, Brock Purdy's got some athleticism, but like if you're a quarterback that is not Lamar Jackson and these quick twitch explosive guys, you're kind of panicking, like, bruh, I'm about to throw this out of bounds because like this dude's about to close, and his closing burst versus closing burst is outstanding too, Keith.
No,
So
it is. It's definitely really good. I agree with you on that, and I think it's very talented. Like you said, his closing burst. Real quick, DP. I got two things because I put Jermaine Johnson in front of him. I wanted to see Jermaine Johnson for you. You put Jared Verse in front of Jermaine Johnson.
That one's tough. Oh man, because Jermaine was so much more nuanced and polished with his hands and his plan. You know what? Because I forgot about Jermaine.
Can't forget about Jermaine. That's my guy, DP. You cannot forget about Jermaine. We pulling for Jermaine in New York.
Oh no, 100%. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Jermaine at 3. I'm gonna go Verse at 4, and then Kayvon at 5. So
okay,
I forgot about Jermaine.
Okay, cool. Well, DP, listen, I and wrap this thing up by saying, obviously, we did this, and this is draft exercises, right? We haven't having fun talking about the different draft classes, right? And I think it's safe to say it looks like DP with the 2022 draft, right, with Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon, Jermaine Johnson, right? He probably would have been somewhere around edge 4-ish, right? And then you look at last year's draft with Will Anderson, then you jump into Tyree Wilson, Lucas Van Ness, Will McDonald. Probably would have been edge 2, right? And could have made a case for edge 1 to battle that thing out with Will Anderson very close. And then this year, he's probably somewhere around edge 2 to 3, right? Depends on how it figures out. So, man, it's real fun to, kind of look back and compare and contrast these draft classes. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing. Coming up next, man, we have a Coach K's Key Thought. And I told you it's about quarterbacks, man. It's about these quarterbacks in this draft class. We have to talk about them. So coming up next, Coach K's Key Thoughts.
Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. New customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players, Steph Curry, Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Joel Embiid, Jokic, Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, whoever. And you can bet on teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. All right, guys? So, again, you can bet on your favorite players and teams on FanDuel Sportsbook. So just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. It's time for Coach K's Key Thoughts. It's been a minute, Coach K, so talk to us. What's that key thought of the day?
DP, we did quarterback rankings. Everybody's talking about quarterbacks, right? And I'm watching these quarterbacks, and there are things that I'm liking. There are things that I'm not liking, DP. But every mock draft, right, religiously, what are we seeing? We're seeing 3 quarterbacks in the top 5, 4 in the top 6, right? These quarterbacks are going to go high for X reason. But what I do believe is that we better make sure that these quarterbacks go to good situations. I don't think that these are situation-proof quarterbacks, meaning that we get from time to time where quarterbacks fall a little bit, and then we like, okay, that's probably appropriate, right? Like this guy, 2nd round grade, he fell to the 2nd round. That makes almost like a Will Levis-esque type situation, right? Like it was about right. But I think with these quarterbacks, DP, you're talking about Jaden Daniels, talking about Caleb Williams, right? Talking about Drake May. Like I said, we see all the highs, but then we also see the lows. And I'm just looking at it. I'm like, these are not situation-proof guys, and we better hope that they go to good situation. And I think that's going to determine more than anything these quarterbacks' success in the NFL.
Oh no, 100%, Keith. Like it's very rare that you get guys that. Like for me, I know we talk about like Caleb Williams being an air raid quarterback, but from a talent standpoint, he can fit any offense in the league. It's all about getting him they're mentally going from the air raid to maybe some more under center,
Mhm.
hard play action, the Tennessee Titans for the past 17 years with Derrick Henry
Right.
in the backfield, that type of offense. But like talent wise, he's a guy that can transcend schemes from a talent standpoint. It's very rare that you get guys that can talent wise fit different schemes. I think most quarterback, I think 85%, I think that's what I remember Scout told me this years ago. 85% of prospects that come into the draft are scheme dependent. Like they need to
Uh-huh.
be in a specific offense or defense to be able to flourish and succeed.
And yeah, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because is that when quarterbacks go that high, right? Like we're talking about 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 4, or anything like that. We put the Superman label on them, or casual fans or draft community, right? They put the Superman label, meaning that these guys are transcendent players, right? If they went pick 1 and pick 2 and pick 3, oh man, we have the greatest thing ever. And I'm looking at this like, hey, I see the opportunity for a lot of success and for these guys to be very talented players and very productive in the NFL. But I also see some situations where they can have a lot of hiccups, right? And we can be 5 years from now reflecting on this thing, sitting there saying, what happened, right? And so I think there's more to the conversation. And also I just want to kind of share with everybody that, listen, these guys are going to go extremely high, right? And whether they're, deserving or not, that's not the point, right? The point is that these are talented quarterbacks, very talented quarterbacks. But as soon as these guys get drafted or even pre-draft, right, we need to start figuring out, man, this is a good spot for this quarterback. This is a great spot for this one. And I hope that this one goes here, right? Because if it's bad, then it can turn bad.
Keith, and I'm not the biggest Bo Nix guy, but if Bo Nix falls to the right situation in the first round, I'm not tripping. I'm not going to argue that because it's like he is talented. He has good
Right.
arm. He is mobile. It's about getting him in the offense that to me is going to simplify the reads and allow him to play loose and free. Because if you get Bo Nix to thinking, that's when you have issues. I don't want it with a Josh McDaniels type of offense. Tell him to have 3 play calls in the huddle and all these option routes. And it's like it takes if you're not good at specific things, then don't call the things that a player's not good at. So I agree with you, Coach K. I love the thought because at the end of the day, as long as you get these kids, these talented prospects in the right situation and give them the weapons, as we see with the San Francisco 49ers, you can get a lot out of them.
Yep. Get them to help. Get them to help. Get them to help, man. Build that thing around these guys because I want nothing more, DP, than these guys to be successful in the NFL, right? Like, because I see the talent and it's like, man, this guy could be as great as this. This guy could be as great as this. But we know that there are times where NFL organizations, they simply ruin the quarterbacks, right? We know that is a very realistic thing. But DP, I'm going to wrap this show up on that note right there, man. Another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast with your favorite dynamic duo, man. Listen, I want to say shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I told you at the top of the show, I'm going to tell you at the bottom of the show, man. If you haven't hit the like button, go hit the like button. If you haven't commented, drop your comment, man. We talked a lot of really fun stuff talking about edge rushers. Jared Verse versus Dallas Turner. Then we went and compared them to the rest of the past 2 draft classes, man. And then we finished this thing up with a Coach K's Keith Thought. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. My co-host, man, my guy, man, my running mate, Damian Parsons is right there, man. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Get the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's show, guys, we're going to talk sleepers. Got some dames, dudes, perfect fits. We love that segment. All that's going to be on tomorrow's show. So thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.